coming? It's not there.
Bring it from your USB.
Sorry about this technical difficulties here.
Open.
Just so sad. As always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to give a talk, but I'm always so nervous. My fingers are there's a lot open there.
Use the stick in there?
Should be like a T. That's a T. Yeah.
Is it D?
E, I think, isn't it? The stick.
It's not showing the. Let's try the USB.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hold it in. Hold the, yeah. Actually, while we're having a...
There it is.
There we go. It's under talks. It's not the noise. Yeah, there is talks. Should be relationships.
What down? Right here. Importance of relationship.
Importance of the relationship.
Down. Right there.
We are all nervous now. No, it's not importance. It's do.
Alright. One last thing to do is to... Hey! Okay, thank you. As I say, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to be here, have this opportunity to deliver today's talk. I was given the luxury today of selecting a topic on my own. Normally Abigail gives us a theme, but I've chosen one that I find very interesting, and I hope you will too. And it's the importance of relationships. For me, meaning relationships are the core of Spiritist teachings and our moral evolution. And I'm using the word relationship in the broadest possible sense. From the field of social psychology, relationships are defined as any association between persons amounting to mutual familiarity, mutual awareness of one another's identities, and a meaningful understanding of the relations to one another. It could be a chance encounter with a stranger, with connection made through a smile or a handshake, or the bond between a mother and child, or the support of family, friends, neighbours, co-workers in times of crisis, or the intimate bond, both intellectual and physical, between lifelong partners. Moreover, these stronger bonds may extend over many reincarnations. But I'd like to start off by going back to the fundamentals of Spiritism and briefly revisit the 5 principles on which the Spiritist doctrine is based. Most of us come here regularly on a Sunday morning and listen to diverse topics. Some of us attend the study groups, others read the books of Kardec and do the gospel at home. But periodically I think it's good just to step back and remind ourselves just what are the fundamental premises of the Spiritist doctrine and just how it differs from other religious belief systems. So firstly, we Spiritists understand the existence of God, the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things, infinitely good and just. Learning to develop our relationship with God is the ultimate goal of our existence, and all of the relationships are essential but secondary to reaching this final destination. I'll come back to the relationship with the Creator at the end of the talk. So we all started our existence as simple and ignorant spirits, with each of us having an inherent desire to evolve both intellectually and morally. Humankind is advancing, but at a diverse rate. With the resources of free will, some of us will make choices that will limit our progress. Others will move in leaps and bounds with a clear understanding of the purpose and direction of this incarnate existence and our final destiny. The second pillar of the Spiritist doctrine is that we're all immortal spirits, souls having an incarnate experience rather than physical bodies with a soul. Upon the death of our physical body, our spirit lives on. And after a shorter or more extended period in the spiritual realm, we return to the material world to continue our intellectual and moral advancement. But more important, we contribute to the progress of society, and consequently we become co-creators with God. And that brings us to the third and most important of the Spiritist principles, the plurality of existences. In the word of Leon Denis from the book After Death, quote, "All the souls who haven't been able to get rid of the earthly influences will be reborn in this world in order to work on their improvement. That is, in the case of a huge majority. Just like other phases of a being's life, reincarnation is ruled by laws. The perispirit's degree of pureness and the molecular affinity that determines the spirit's classification in space also set the conditions for reincarnation." And he goes on to say, "Similar things are attracted to each other, and it is due to this law of attraction and harmony that the spirits of the same order, who present analogous character and tendencies, become close and follow one another throughout the multiple existences, incarnating together and constituting homogeneous families." This last part, I think, that we reincarnate together and constitute, homogeneous families, is really the core of my talk today. This whole ability to carry on, have this opportunity to reincarnate together and keep these families and these relationships. The spirits tell us that depending on our level of advancement, we eventually reach a level of evolvement, that we become participants in our own reincarnatory planning. We deliberately choose situations that prove difficult but doable challenges, offer the greatest learning experiences. Often the trials we face are to address imperfections embedded in our perispirit, created by misguided actions in the past. Simply put, this is a law of cause and effect in action. We must reincarnate in the flesh to rid ourselves of these delights and trappings of the flesh. We must all go through this material experience. Even the high order spirits experience material life as simple and ignorant spirits like ourselves. But their ascendancy is such they now no longer have the need for further reincarnation. We too will all get there someday, and only we ourselves can decide when. So reincarnation is the principal tool leading to our intellectual and moral advancement and our final destination of perfection. Michelangelo used his chisel as a tool to work on his chosen medium, marble, to create his masterpiece of David. That's not this David, that's the other David. An artist may choose the tool of paint and canvas to explore the medium of visual representation to express feelings. A performing artist may choose the tool of music to express emotions through the medium of movement and dance. As the text of Leon Denis so insightfully explains, the tool of reincarnation is ineffective without the interaction with others, particularly the families of spirits that create this homogeneous family. And we're going to explore this concept later as I turn to the spirit book and particularly the law of society. But let's go back to the basic principles of Spiritism. The fourth and fundamental principle is the plurality of worlds. For those of you who have seen the recent film about Kardec, we can well appreciate the challenges that he faced when he published his first edition of the Spiritsm book back in 1857. At that time, the field of cosmology was in its infancy, telescopes rudimentary, and there was little or no knowledge of planets beyond our own solar system, yet alone beyond galaxies beyond. Today we know that our galaxy contains about 100 billion stars, and the known universe approximately 200 billion galaxies. So virtually all scientists agree that the probability of life on other outside Earth is almost 100%. It's got to be 100%, and that's what this point brings out. But finally, to the fifth and last principle of the Spiritist principle, which is the communicability. I've got problems with that word. Communicability between spirits. Without communication between the two realms of existence, we would not have Spiritist codification and consequently the Spiritist doctrine. In fact, without the communication between spirits, we wouldn't be meeting here today. By the way, talking about these five fundamentals of Spiritism, I've got to give credit to the video of Andrea and Marcello. It's available on the website. It's good to see that video. It's a 5-minute video, but it really brings home these points very beautifully. So following on from this last fundamental principle of Spiritism, the communicability between spirits, I'd like to turn to the bedrock of Spiritism, which of course is the Spiritist book, the Spirit's book. In the third part of the book, Kardec organised the responses to over 300 questions and groups the answers in separate chapters, each focusing on one of the moral laws. In particular, in chapter 7, Kardec explores with the spirit mentors, the human need, the societal law, repercussions of living in isolation and the vow of silence, and finally, family ties, and how humans differ from other animals. Question 766, Kardec asks, is societal law life natural? And of course the answer is certainly. God has made humans for living in society. Otherwise it would be needless for God to have endowed them with speech and all the other faculties necessary for a life of relationships. Spirits make 2 points here. That we are made for living in society, which he explores at a deeper level in the subsequent questions. But secondly, that we're endowed with speech and all the other faculties. What do the spirits mean by all the other faculties? Obviously the sense of hearing and touch come to mind. Undoubtedly, we underutilise these senses in our interactions with others. Particularly, how many relationships suffer because of the inability of one of the parties to simply listen to the other. But I believe when the spirits talk of human faculties, it's in a much broader context, which encompasses concepts beyond our 5 senses. These are the traits that make us particularly human and distinguish us from the other animals, include empathy, kindness, patience, charity, and of course love, to name a few. In question 767, he asks, is absolute isolation contrary to the law of nature? So again, it's the inverse of the question before. This Kardec, I always love the way he tries to come in from different angles, but gets the same answer. It's because people instinctively seek out societal living, and because all of them must cooperate in humankind's progress by mutually helping one another. And again, this message here is central to what I'm talking about today. We instinctively seek out social living. We must cooperate in humankind's progress by mutually helping one another. When I was thinking about this topic, I went back to a film I remember, Castaway, starring Tom Hanks. This was over 20 years ago now. And perhaps many of you will recall, Hanks plays the role of a FedEx executive, Chuck Nolan, I think is his name. And he survives a plane crash in the middle of the Pacific and ends up on a tropical island. Skip the page here. Initially, he struggles to find the necessities of life: food, clothing, shelter. But he finds resources from the parcels washed up from the plane. And one of those resources he finds Wilson brand volleyball. One day, in trying to create a fight, he badly cuts his hand. And in frustration, he picks up the volleyball and throws it as far as his limited strength would allow him. But then a few days later, he comes across the volleyball and sees this bloody imprint on the ball. And it looks like a face. And he takes it back to his shelter. And he develops this relationship with this volleyball. Over time, this relationship became such that it helps him, keeps his sanity and his hope in his isolation. In a way, without realising it, Wilson has become his guardian angel. Now, although Castaway is a fictional Hollywood movie, it does illustrate this basic human need we have to connect with others, even through a proxy, in this case, Wilson the volleyball. And this fact is further clarified in question 768, when Kardec asks, is seeking societal living, do people only obey a personal sentiment, or is there a wider providential purpose involved? And the spirits answer, human must progress. You cannot do so alone. Again, you cannot do so alone. However, since they do not all possess every faculty, we have this word again, faculty, they need contact with others. In isolation, they become brutish and withered. And then finally at the end, Kardec adds his own comments, and he says, no single individual possesses the complete range of faculties. It is through societal union that individuals complete one another. Actually, that complete one another brings to mind another film, right? You complete me. I can't remember what the film was. Just anyway, sorry, I'm getting that sidetracked here.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. There we go. Thank you, Susan. It's because we need to live we need one another. We've been created to live in society and not in isolation. And again, he emphasised the need to complete our faculties and how individuals, through interactions with one another and society, are instrumental in reaching these goals. In the next chapter, Kardec addressed the question of isolation and vows of silence. I particularly like the Spirit's response: God cannot consider as pleasing a life which person condemns themselves to being useless to everyone else. And that's very interesting, I think. It's one thing to deprive yourself of the ability and the opportunities to learn, but you're also depriving others of the opportunity to learn with you, from you. And he ends with the comments: the vow of absolute silence, like the vow of isolation, deprives the individual of the societal relations that can furnish them with the opportunities to do good and to fulfill the law of progress. Sometimes silence is important. We need to reflect and sometimes meditate. Jesus did it for 40 days in the desert. But a whole life dedicated to silence and isolation is not what we're intended to do. And in the last part of the chapter, the law of society, entitled Family Ties, Kardec explores the differences of the family bonds between humans and animals. The Spirits tell us that animals live a material life, not a moral life. A mother's tenderness for a young has as its principle the instinct of preservation regarding the beings being born to her. When these beings can take care of themselves, her task is fulfilled, and nature requires no more of her. Thus, she abandons them in order to occupy herself with more newborns. And finally, Kardec ends the chapter with the following comments: human beings have a different destiny than animals. For humans, there is something beyond physical needs. There is a need of progress. Social ties are necessary for progress. Family ties are summed up in social ties. Hence, family ties are a law of nature. God has thus willed that humans learn to love one another as brothers and sisters. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'd just like to delve a little bit further into this idea of the differences between animals and the human race. We're not alone in our ability to live in extended communities, constantly interacting and supporting one another. In the animal kingdom, there are countless examples of communication and cooperation on a huge scale. In the insect world, we have ants and bees build communities with an industry and purpose, resulting in cities of anthills and beehives, constantly expand over generation. Often springs separation and start of new colonies to repeat the process over again. These communities have a large number of individuals, but they're based on inflexible relationships. The DNA of the individuals is programmed only one way. A worker ant will always be just that, and only the queen bee is able to create offspring. The combined function is survival of the species and nothing more. And this process has been going on for millions of years. On the other hand, our nearest cousins, the chimpanzees, can form much closer bonds, demonstrating flexibility in their relationship with other members of the group. They are sensitive to the needs, likes and dislikes of other members. They show empathy and care for each other, sharing child-rearing responsibilities, and demonstrate tenderness through mutual grooming. There is, however, a strict hierarchy under the control of the alpha male. The groups rarely exceed 100 individuals, more or less, so that in times of plenty, when climate and food sources are available, the group grows beyond a critical point and separation occurs. Now, what makes human beings unique is our ability to communicate both flexibly and in large numbers, and has led to the total denomination of all of the species on Earth, including our most recent brothers, the the Neanderthals. So this is it. This is the difference what makes us different. We can work together in large numbers, very large numbers, and flexibly. Sometimes we're not as flexible as we should be, but we'll come more onto that in a minute. I'd like to turn now to examine the spheres of human relationships and how these relationships progress through our material existence. The first and most important relationship it has with ourselves. The eminent psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung established that the unconscious is a veritable ocean, with only the visible part, about 5%, being the area of consciousness. According to Gianni DeAngelis in the book Life, Challenges and Solutions, can someone read from it? Susanna, can you read from this?
Read?
Yeah.
Please read for the people who are following the...
Okay, of course.
Yes.
Excuse me a second. Yeah, I forget we got people online, yeah. Where am I? It is very difficult for the unconscious mind to be dissociated from the different manifestations of human life, for it very powerfully dictates the events that compromise life's impulses and activisms. And she goes on to say, nevertheless, we must bear in mind the presence of the spirit, which transcends effects and begins to exercise its function in the unconscious, the real reservoir of all the individual's experience on the long, I love this word, anthropo-socio-psychological journey that he or she has inherited from successive reincarnations. But the spirits also tell us that the most of the suffering in our incarnate life, be it physical, manifesting as pain or illness, or psychological, in mental disorders, are results of past actions in this current life, albeit that the cause is most often or not hidden in our unconscious. It's estimated we have between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. I think I have more than 100, but that's about 3,000 an hour, 50 a minute, or one every second, assuming we sleep when we still continue thinking during our sleep. Most of our thoughts are negative. I'm too fat. I'm lazy. I need to go to the gym more. She doesn't like me. I'm not good enough, and so on. Joanna DeAngelis in the same chapter has the following. It is in the unconscious that we find the presence of the spirit in the folds of the inner being, impregnated with memories that do not reach the current conscious and yet affect our behavior indirectly, causing disquieting and unfamiliar states within the structure of the ego. Self-identification, self-discovery, enables individuals to grasp the need for progress, while at the same time it disarticulates the difficulties that have been formed by negative past life experiences, the vestiges of which continue to cause problems. In question 919 of the Spirits book, Kades asks, what is the most effective means for improving ourselves in this life and for resisting the attraction of wrongdoing? Anybody know the answer? John, do you know the answer?
I would say you have to know yourself.
Know yourself, you got it. Okay. Yeah. A sage of antiquity has told you, know thyself. In the inspiring message to this question in 919, the Spirit Saint Augustine tells us, those who every night would recall all their actions during the day and would ask themselves what good or wrongdoing they have done, praying to God and their guardian angel to enlighten them, would acquire great strength for self-improvement, because, believe me, God will assist you. Therefore, ask yourselves about what you have done and toward what aim you acted in a particular circumstance. Whether you have done anything that you would blame in others, whether you have done anything that you could not dare profess. And he adds, self-knowledge is therefore the key to individual improvement. But how, will you ask, do we judge ourselves? Won't be under the illusion of vanity, which exalts our wrongs and makes them excusable? When you are indecisive as to the quality of any one of your actions, and ask how you would judge it if it had been done so by someone else, if you blame it on another, it cannot be any more legitimate for you, for God does not use two measures for justice. Also, seek to know what others think about you, and do not neglect the opinion of your enemies, because they have no interest in disguising the truth. And hereby lies the key to self-identification, self-discovery, and self-enlightenment. So much of our unconscious self is revealed to us through our relationship with others, our thoughts, but more importantly our feelings about others, a simple projection of ourselves. Psychological projection is described as a defense mechanism in which the human ego defends itself against unconscious impulses or qualities, both positive and negative, by denying their existence in themselves while attributing it to others. When we point our fingers at someone else, we point 3 fingers back at ourselves. For example, the creating thought, I'm too fat, maybe manifests itself by projecting onto someone else with the thought, gosh, hasn't so-and-so put on a lot of weight? Another example is the anxiety and tension we often feel around others. It can be a reflection of the way we perceive ourselves. When we are insecure, have low self-esteem, it is common to perceive the problem as being with the other person and not ourselves. A classic form of projection is common amongst those suffering from social anxiety. I could spend the whole of this talk, if not a whole seminar, exploring the field of projection psychology. And the insight it provides us is in understanding our relationship with others, but more importantly, the relationship with ourselves. However, I hope this superficial and very naive overview will inspire you to further study. By the way, in preparing this talk, I actually discovered an amazing video available on YouTube. It's called The Shadow Effect. Anybody seen it? The Shadow Effect. It's about an hour, but I really invite you to see it. There's a lot of spiritist messages in there, but a lot of learning and helping you to know what is in your shadow and how you can use that to your advantage. So, although knowing oneself is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, relationships encompass all forms of connection, interaction and exchange with others. We live our life in concentric spheres of relationship, starting with ourselves and radiating out, but finally ending back in ourselves with the most important relationship of all, and that is with our Creator. This list is sequential, but with the realization of self as an infant and ending with the inevitable death of the physical body. And we continue in the spiritual realm. But early on in our incarnate existence as an individual, we nurture multiple relationships, simultaneously, many individuals from all types of associations. I was reminded of just how many personal relationships and connections one accumulates during a lifetime. When last month our daughter got married, we rented this beautiful function room in Secret Woods in the Broward Nature Reserve. Bad news was that there's only a maximum of 80 guests. Actually, the good news was there's also a maximum of 80 guests. Because, but with the happy couple not having 4 but 7 parents between them, including 3 step-parents, the groom and aunts and uncles, 12 aunts and uncles, 26 cousins, the bride and the family in Australia, England, Brazil, not to mention friends, work colleagues. Finalising that invitation list was quite a challenge for everyone involved. But how does one maintain so many healthy relationships? Again, I'd like to return to the book of Joanna de Angelis, this time in chapter 9. And she goes on by saying, humans cannot live without the harmony of their social group. Gregarious animals, they are nourished by the energy and presence of others like them, who stimulate them in advance to their quest for self-realization. The social relationship is of major importance for developing the qualities that lie in the folds of the unconscious, awaiting stimuli to bring them to the surface. This is only possible by living with persons of the same ilk. As they live with others, human beings smooth out their rough edges, inner edges, and adapt to their group. They learn that complete attunement to others results in productivity and the moral growth of society. Their own growth is growth for everybody. Their own failure is a collective failure. In this endeavour, therefore, they discover the beauty and harmony, which is the result of complete oneness with everyone else in the group. Again, this is from the book Life, Challenges and Solutions. Excellent book. One of Joanne's books that I think is much more easy to read. It's very deep still, but it's much more readable than a lot of books which are very much sort of psychology. But I'd like to return to at the end now to where I started this talk, and from the principles of Spiritism, and look at the question from the Spirit's book: what is God? God, the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things, infinitely good and just. I confess I'm still unconfident when I talk about God and what the concept of God really means to me. For many attributes that describe God, eternal, infinite, immutable, immaterial, one, all-powerful, doesn't really help. But I'd like to take solace in the answer to question 11 of the Spirits book, when the Spirits explain, when spirits are no longer eclipsed by matter, when they have finally purified themselves enough to be able to approach God, they will see and comprehend God. We also know we're still very low on the pecking order of our spiritual enlightenment. But wherever we are, we each of us find our own relationship with God and establish our own personal comfort zone. For me, God, or G-O-D, is the grand organizing designer. I know it will be many, many incarnations before I'll be able to get really close to him, personal with him, or it. At least I understand what I need to do. It's like working for a huge multinational company with a CEO with so many layers removed that I haven't even seen his picture. However, like all major corporations, there is a mission statement to guide us, all employees, in the same direction so that everyone is aligned with the same goal. I remember back in my corporate days when I worked for Johnson & Johnson, and the company placed a lot of emphasis on its mission statement, or as they called it, the credo. But unlike major corporations, it placed the shareholders in last place. Being a company built on healthcare, the first priority was always focused on the patients, the doctors, the nurses, whoever uses the products. The second responsibility was the employees, and the third on the communities and the environment in which it operates. And the last was to the shareholders, in the belief that living up to the first three responsibilities, the shareholders will get a fair return on their investments. The J&J Credo is a classic which stands out among mission statements of all the major corporations in the world. Probably the main reason why the company's continued to grow over its 130-year history. But like the J&J Credo, Humankind's mission statement is very clear and simple. So simple, in fact, it's only 2 words. And these 2 words are love unconditionally. I hope today I've sensitized everyone to the importance of building healthy relationships so that each and every encounter with a fellow spirit on this journey to enlightenment provides an opportunity to give both and receive, to give and receive, to teach and to learn. It is only, and I repeat, only through our relationship with others that we will achieve our common goal of unconditional love. And finally, I'd like to end by sharing with you a message from a 13th century poet, Rumi, which I came across this week. And it clearly and eloquently captures this sentiment. It's called The Guest House. Each human being is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently clean your house empty of all its furniture, still treat each guest honourably. He may re-clean you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing. Invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, but each has been sent to you as a guide from beyond. So I thank you for your attention and patience, and I wish you all happy relationships.
Very good.
Any questions, comments? Yes, John.
Your talk, thank you, certainly emphasizes the importance of relationships in ourselves. When we go to spirit, I would assume relationships are still very important, but have you come up with any information as the spirit progresses? Do relationships become more important, less important?
That's a good question. Well, certainly the relationship we have in the incarnate existence continue in the spirit world, and no more than Andre Louise with all his books. In fact, I think it's in Nosola that he meets his mother, but his mother is so far advanced that it's a very brief encounter. And again, you know, the law of cause and effects and the way we advance and we use our free will, we will maybe sometimes separate. But yes, I would think relationships continue and just as important in the spirit world, if not more important. Angie, you want to add to that?
No, the relationships, it actually expands, because the person that was your mother in one life, and the previous life was your spouse, and the next will be your daughter, and just too many different spirits. So that's what's going to make the family not just your blood family, but your spiritual family.
But you'd say as the spirit goes to a pure spirit, these relationships become more important?
What we know is that in the higher realms of